Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sons and Daughters of Liberty. Tonight's discussion will be on something that I find very disturbing, as should all of you. Defacing our monuments in history has become the new book burning. And, maybe some of you guys don't even know what I refer to book burning means, and we'll cover that because it's part of history that you're probably not being taught anymore. I'd like to quote somebody. Heinrich Heine, a German Jewish poet and writer, said in the 19th century, "Where books are burned, people will soon be burned as well." And he was very so right, as history showed us with World War I and World War II. As you guys, many of you know, Confederate statues and stuff being removed. And I guess people don't get it, I guess. They think it's cool. They think it's a blemish on our country, what this country's about. All right, on the same token, why would you spray paint in red F law on the Lincoln Memorial on one of the pillars? Why would you spray paint our graffiti on a sign near the Smithsonian or on a Vietnam Veteran Memorial? These are all monuments and part of history. We honor them by showing them that we're not going to repeat the past, that we've learned from it. We honor our Confederate soldiers because they are soldiers. They were United States soldiers. And they're honored as such. And I must point out, the Supreme Court just this year ruled about hate speech, and that it is protected under the Constitution. I'm even against, and this has happened this year too, finding lynches around certain monuments in D.C. that are more for monuments for representing the black. I'm against that. Any type of defacing our monuments, disrespecting the history, is wrong of any kind. But on the same token, if you want to make a big deal about our Confederate monuments, then let's remove all monuments. No, you guys wouldn't like that. In fact, you guys would complain, cry, and throw a fit. So if the shoe fits, you guys wear it. And I am happy to announce that charges will be filed for those that took part in taking down the statue. They're in North Carolina. And I hope you guys do realize that you can actually be charged with a federal crime. No part of this is even cool. It's bad enough we let Common Core come in, strip the history, this type of history, out of our history books. This is why we have such things going on today. It was the rewriting of history. They want to take the blemishes out. That's not what America is. That's what made America. These monuments are up as a reminder of how we got here, so we don't repeat the mistakes, so we better ourselves. But I guess you guys don't know. So you know what that reminded me? I'm going to show you pictures, because I think you guys have a right to see what you guys are doing. And the very first picture I'm going to show you is what it reminded me of when I seen that coming down. You guys recognize that? Do you remember when that took place? It wasn't too long ago. It was in the 2000s. When we went and took over Iraq, invaded Iraq. So let me ask you something. What makes this cool here in the United States to do this? Are you saying you're invading our country? Are you saying you're wanting to strip our liberties and rights and freedoms away? Are you disrespecting our history and our past instead of learning from it? Because, honestly, this is a third world country. You know who else did stuff like this just recently? ISIS. Destroying and removing Christian historical, or any religion besides theirs. They were defacing and removing it. You know who else did it? Some of the popes in the Catholic Church defaced history. Every dictatorship or organization has pulled this same move throughout history. Does this look like a third world country to you? No. I mean, this part made no sense. Because basically you're saying, oh, I know what you're saying. But this would have been considered union. This was the guy that put the emancipation and gave the slaves freedom. But you want to deface this part of history as well. Tells me you guys have either not been taught your history, or you just don't care. You just think it's cool. But it was cool? Let me show you. Yeah, that looks like about the young crowd. Pictures and faces of the young crowds I've seen at Durham and Charlottesville and Berkeley and Seattle. Oddly enough, this was taken in 1933. When all the Nazi kids ran into the libraries, grabbing the books and burning them, destroying history. We'll leave this image up for a little bit. I want it to sink in. so you guys understand exactly what you're doing. This is what Common Core did. Except for they just didn't burn the books. They just started removing it from the history books that the young generation has now been taught, minus all the history. It started there with Common Core. Now we're up to monuments. How long before this, it's, as the writer, poet said, where books are burned, people will soon be burned as well? How long before that starts happening? Well, we already had our first fatality at a rally. You know, and I can't believe everybody wants to get mad at the president, who condemned both sides for the violence. You guys might forget the adage, it takes two to tango. You're going to have two people to fight. You're going to have two people to argue. You know what some of the problem is? You guys don't research anything. You don't question anything. You take for granted because what you were taught in schools is to be right. So this part, when this history is missing, you don't have the knowledge to counter when somebody brings these types of ideologies. Groups, all of these groups, alt-right, alt-light, left, nationalist, socialist, communist, they've all got their infiltrations. I mean, how many of you actually understand the nationalists? You know we've been at war and opposing the nationalists since the Revolutionary War, even afterwards. Do you know that part of history? Of course not. It's been removed. Which is why you guys think when somebody tells you these things, that they're off their rocker, that they're lying to you. Or do I need to bring up some Holocaust pictures to remind you, the young Jews out there that are part of the alt-right, preaching the same ideologies of eugenics, the Hitler ideologies, the Nazism ideologies, coming from Jews, the young generation. Maybe and some of these generations never met the Holocaust survivors, never met the ones that were marked with tattoos with numbers on their arms. So they don't realize that part of history, or they just don't care. They want, in truth, a lot of these guys are just provocateurs, infiltrators that infiltrated these groups to change the ideology, to brainwash the young kids, the ones that don't know any better because they weren't taught the history. So yes, defacing our monuments and defacing our history by removing it leads to the very same thing that we opposed during World War II, that people opposed the Roman Empire, people that oppose the Islamists, ISIS, when they do these things in third world countries. I mean, shocking resemblance, isn't it? And that was in most people's history right here. Most people witnessed this. to see you do it here on the U.S. soil and not understanding history. Is quite disrespectful to every American. It's disrespectful to our ancestors. You know, even in the video I did yesterday, I clearly stated, you know, all sides were to blame. There was plenty of blame to go around. In fact, all sides are equally to blame, because if you're young and you're out there joining these movements and you're not researching, you're not questioning these speakers, where they come from, what are they about, then you're just equally is to blame, because you're not educating yourself. You're following. You're just nothing but a follower. To those guys, followers are nothing but puppets that they can manipulate. You don't see them going to jail. You don't see them getting locked up. Let me tell you another aspect of this. Doxing. Because now that's what they're trying to do. Getting pictures, finding their names and stuff, looking people up that was at these rallies and doxing them, calling their employers and calling people in the community about. You know who did that? Hitler. Every dictator has done that. You're becoming dictators. But you're the worst kind. You're puppets. When are you guys going to wake up? When are you going to put these stupid ideologies and wake up to what they are? They're meant to divide. There's plenty of problems going in this country that needs fixed. Real problems. You guys will talk about them, then you'll create new ones, thinking, oh, with using this ideology, we can fix them. They don't fix them. They lead to ruin and destruction. History has shown us this. Educate yourselves. Learn to question. Because I tell you what, I oppose any type of this. I'm against any type of it. You know, when I hear about them putting a lynch around civil rights monuments, I'm against that. That's not freedom of speech. Trying to bring down a monument, whether it even be the Ten Commandments, which we've seen this year too. That is wrong. Maybe you guys don't realize that. You guys don't realize the fact. Who does this stuff? Groups like ISIS, groups like the Nazis of Hitler. Dictators do these things. They strip the history so they can teach their ideologies, their philosophies, to brainwash you. Back then they called it book burning. Today we call it Common Core. Today we call it triggered. It triggers me. It's offensive. Flying the American flag in our colleges. Oh, that flag offends me. You know what's even sickening? The colleges that remove the flags. Because you guys are a minority. You're not a majority. You guys don't speak for the everyday, real American citizen. When you do these things, you spit on our forefathers' graves. You spit on every soldier out there that bleeds and dies to protect our very freedoms, our Constitution. You even, then, when things go wrong, what's the first thing you cry? Oh, you violated my constitutional right. And you expect people like me, who believe in the Constitution, support the Constitution, expect me to defend your actions? It's funny how quick you go to hide behind something. When you do that, you make a mockery of it. You have no cause. The only cause you have is what these people are feeding you. Because they know many of you haven't been taught your history. Many of you are still holding on to old hatreds. And not realizing that we don't live in those times. I mean, I find any form of removing monuments, vandalizing them, disrespectful. I don't care what monument it is. And obviously, you guys don't know the difference because you wouldn't have spray painted some of our national monuments in D.C. I mean, it goes completely against your movement if you want to take down a Confederate statue to go spray paint on Lincoln's memorial. Don't make much sense, does it? You know, the real issue is, and most of us will agree, is Common Core. Common Core is taking those parts of history out, implementing new things to where, oh, we can't talk about this because, in fact, we can't let our students read Huckleberry Finn because it preaches racism. It teaches slavery. But instead, here, now required reading 50 Shades of Grey. I'd be dead wrong if I went in that classroom and smacked the teacher for giving that book to one of my kids to read, wouldn't I? In fact, I'd have to go to jail for doing that. You know, past few videos, I keep talking about communities. Start talking, socializing with our communities, building up our community leaders, putting people from our communities into this system, into our state system, into our education system, people that know what's going on, understand these things. We don't want this stuff happening. We want our history as it has been taught to us to be taught to our kids so they don't repeat history. So we don't have Hitler ideology, Nazi ideology of book burning. Hello, Pam. You know, first thing that comes on, as soon as I get up today, first tweet I see was a defacing of the Lincoln Memorial of graffiti. I mean, come on. First thing I hear about yesterday, the removal, young kids tearing down a Confederate statue. And we've all talked about Common Core. I mean, we can talk Common Core till we're blue in the face. It's time it's removed from the school system, our education system. It's time history is taught. And when I say history, I do mean recent history as well. I mean, or else we're just going to be looking at images like this again. And must I remind you, where did we see something similar to this? That's right, Iraq. In fact, if I wanted to, I could have got more pictures of what ISIS has done to Christian sites, to other religion sites. Any religion that opposes theirs, they've defaced and destroyed. That's recent history. Well, I do know in Durham, North Carolina, the sheriffs came out and said they're investigating people will be arrested for doing this. The sad part is they'll be charged more than likely with a federal crime and get a slap on the wrist instead of going to a real jail and a real prison. Most of them will probably just get petty vandalism charges, misdemeanor charges. There's in no country should this ever be allowed, because when they start doing this, it represents the stripping of our history. You know, it's like I said, and nobody questions anything. You're quick to jump to a label that is a group, no matter what it is, and you don't question even the speakers that are going to be there. You don't research who's going to be talking. Do those people really represent those movements? No, they don't. A lot of them are paid to go in there to infiltrate these groups and change the ideology. Because why? The young generation doesn't know their history. They weren't taught these things. What they learn it from is from what people tell them, what they get fed through social media. You know, and that's what they go on. So when people come around, a little tacky vanilla, because I mean, I know I remember growing up, I was told not to question my elders, not to question my teachers. You know, I don't have kids, never did, but I would have taught my kids the same thing. Because that's what I was taught. But I was also taught to question. I learned to question. We live in a day and age where we can't trust the media. Sometimes we can't even trust our local news or the things we read in the papers, because most people, they grew up Washington Post, New York Times. And trust me, people use that to their advantage as well. Once you sow the seeds of discord and chaos, then you can come in, give them a little truth. The rest is your ideology, what you want them to believe. Why you gave them just a little bit of truth. This so happens that they go look into it, they find that one article that talks about it, that backs what they're saying, and they'll never question anything further. Once that happens, they had control over you. They can manipulate you. This is exactly, does anybody know the term brown shirts? This is exactly what Hitler's youth, how they were programmed and trained. It's how he trained the youth. So in 1933, they went into the libraries and the schools and pulled all the books and burnt them. Young kids. But yet this is the history they don't teach you. Yes. Actually turned into a movement that later became called the, what was it, Nazi youth? Hitler youth? I can't remember. It was a term for it. I mean, look at all this. Young kids watching. Young kids are now watching this. Tearing down monuments. Why? Because our education system has told them it's appropriate, it's okay, because it's a blemish on what America is today. That's what Common Core has taught our kids. While the parents are too busy working 2 jobs, or both parents are working long hours, they don't have time to go over their homework, ask what their kids are being taught. And what's the first thing people want to blame? Oh, it's the parents' fault. No, it's not. I don't blame the parents one bit. I blame our state government, our federal government, our crooked politicians, corrupt politicians that pass legislation that does nothing more than put money in their pockets and make us have to work more hours. They haven't done jack for us. That's why it's important as a community we get together with our communities, create new leaders from our communities, people, everyday people that know what it's like to work, that knows their history. Yeah, Pam, it is. It's sickening to watch it. And it's happening. You know, I watched some of the people that I've been following, because I'm not scared to follow people that have different ideologies than me, different beliefs. And some of the stuff they say, I watched this one person say, it's time that the young generations take over because Generation X failed. They dropped the ball. We didn't drop the ball. We're too busy working our butts off to make sure you got a college education and had food on the table. It wasn't like when I was growing up where, you know, one parent could still work and one parent could stay home. I mean, that was slowly changing as I was growing up because eventually my mom ended up having to work too. Which was where it started, in the 90s, mid-90s to be exact. Both parents end up having to start to work to be able to support the house, the family, put food on the table, pay the bills. So that was our role models. We've seen that. So now we think both parents now have to work, and which in truth, they do. Or else you're not going to have nothing. These very same things have happened throughout history in other countries. We're playing with the economics. That's why history is so important. That's why Hitler and his predecessors before him moved history before things started to go one-sided down a road nobody wanted to see, and that everybody regrets after it after it unfolds. History is meant to be protected. It's meant to be learned from, not removed. We should not be repeating what this image is showing. And some of you say, well, we're not burning books. No, you're doing something far worse. You're removing history from our books. You're removing the monuments from that represent a time of history that's set there, that's been put up there so we don't repeat it. I mean, now I drew past a couple colleges on my way back from North Carolina a couple months ago. You know what I didn't see? Flying at those colleges, American flags. I remember when I went to college. I remember every college I went to check out, to visit, to see if I wanted to go there. The first thing you see as you're pulling up, you see the American flag, then right under it you're seeing that college's flag. But now it's okay, because now we have professionals that won't stand up for the national anthem. You know, if I was a coach and you did that, you wouldn't be playing on my team. But then again, we're dealing with corporations, because the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, they're all big corporations. But the NFL may have learned their lesson over that. Yeah, they have. Pam said they've been preconditioning drip by drip, feminist movement, free love in the 70s. That'd be nice, not give your age. You know, but look, let's look at the feminist movement. Even the history of that since the 2000s have changed. It's not what the feminist movement originally was about. It used to be about equality. Now it's about everything but that. Now it's about when issues of immigration or travel bans come up, they want to oppose it. But yet, these countries that we're banning these people from, or not letting them in, is only shipping their military-aged people over, not the children, not the women. And the very same country, these countries, what do they do to the women? Yeah, they don't have no rights. But they rally behind Linda. You know what? She wouldn't be speaking like that in one of those countries. You know what I actually wish our news would actually do? Show you the real videos. Of course, now with all the censorship, all those videos are coming down quick that you could find on YouTube, what they do to women, homosexuals. If people actually seen the raw videos, human trafficking, sex trafficking, it's huge. It's bigger than what it was now than what it was in the 18th century. How many ICE raids have actually stopped human trafficking this year alone? And they've called it that. Does it get media attention? No. But if we talk about it, our stuff gets removed. Or they infiltrate our groups. and infiltrate what used to be the truther community, who was bringing up during, I'm not going to say the word, but PG. I think you guys can figure it out. Everybody loves to eat it. You know, people were talking about that very same thing, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, on that. Then people just came up and started taking it other ways to shifting the issue. And you've seen those issues get trending while people were talking about the human trafficking, the sex trafficking. You've seen they weren't getting hardly no views at all anymore. I don't know. I think Be Rich was onto something for those new to the stream. Be Rich, iCitizen News, check them out. Be Rich did a thing about the sex trafficking and the PG thing when all those emails came out, and he talked about it. He talked about the abductions here in the United States, the missing children, how the numbers have increased. But that wasn't being talked about during the previous administration. Now we see it with the ICE raids. The stuff's starting to get light. I've seen it happen here. I don't know how many times in Toledo, Ohio. They've raided shops and found it. Yeah, he is great, and he is on point on that. That's what got me started to investigate Wikipedia, which I ended up getting permanently banned, my IP address banned from Wikipedia over it. You know, and that's the other thing. We teach the colleges teach their college students that you can reference it and get your sources off Wikipedia. You know what the academic community says about Wikipedia? It's not a place for factual sources. And those videos are on Drew Lima's channel. I won't bring them over here because of the censor headache I got with them. But I showed them the video that they play that you can actually watch on Wikipedia about Wikipedia. It talks about how anybody can edit it. It doesn't work that way, guys. I found out. It's controlled by certain groups of people, and they put up what they believe history is. Then you come to find out that a lot of these articles that are up there now, you can't even go in and request an edit. Oh, it's very manipulated. I had 7 people come up to me with various different topics, because at that time I was only really researching the PG topic on Wikipedia, and they linked me to other articles on it that you couldn't edit or change, that wasn't factual at all. There was one on the Holocaust, pseudoscience medicine. Once more, aspects of history being removed and changed with opposing ideologies saying it never happened. Or this don't happen. Another classic example is sealed documents. I did a couple videos on this channel about it, about a case here in Ohio, a case in North Carolina. The documents were sealed on convicted terrorists here in the United States. They just became unsealed. And the one in North Carolina is scary, scary, because it showed a flaw in the system. And I actually talked to my cousin, who's retired commercial air pilot. And he said, yeah, it's always been a perk for us. It was called the buddy pass system. Come to find out, there was another term for it. I can't remember it now. Enhanced security. You get a buddy pass system, pass, and you can get enhanced security, which allows you to bypass the checkpoint. And you can actually go right straight to the check-in desk, the boarding desk. And basically what you do, you wait. And if the plane is not full, you're allowed to board. Mind you, you just walked past the TSA, didn't go through the checkpoint, didn't get flagged because they never checked you. All you have to do is show a photo ID, and all they do is look at the photo ID and make sure it matches your face, and they don't run you through a system or a computer. Why? Because, well, you're technically being represented by the airline. One of their workers have given you this pass, so they know you. And come to find out, this ISIS supporter made a deal with the feds, undercover Fed, and used his wife's buddy pass system to get tickets so they could board this flight. Oh, and we got lucky. In both these incidents, local news picked it up and released the unsealed documents. But, past 8 years, the status quo was, this don't happen here in the United States. We don't have a terrorist problem. That was the status quo. You know why it was the status quo? Because every incident that happened turned out to be sealed. You'd practically have to be able to live in every county to pay attention to the local news that picks it up. Because it's not getting mainstream. So now our mainstream has become basically how the media was used for propaganda warfare during World War I and World War II. That's what our media has become. But, once again, it goes back to, does our younger generation know this? No, because they don't teach that stuff in the history class anymore. They removed even books in the schools that have that history. One of my favorite books that I actually read, it was like almost 2,000 pages, was The History of World War II. Mockingbird, yes. It was The History of World War II. I asked a kid I know, once goes to the school I went to, I asked him, is that book still there? No, come to find out, it's one of their banned books now. It was graphic. But it was a history. So that's why we see what's happening today. I mean, this is just uncalled for. I don't care what kind of statue it is. Because this is what happens in third world countries when you take down a dictator. Common Core is this right here, just in a different form, under a different name. Instead of book burning, it's called Common Core now. How did we, I don't even, look at, Pam, you brought up something good. Let's look at the rallies of the 60s and 50s, the protests of the 50s and 60s. I mean, some of them the civil rights ones got violent. But from that, what transpired? More the love generation. Peace, love, not hate. It was more of a time of philosophy again. See, philosophy always comes back. Transcends into a raptor or something ugly. in history. The philosophers come out. And all we're doing is just keep repeating history. Instead of addressing the issues. I'll be honest with you. I've gotten around, been places, done things I shouldn't have done. But you know what? My whole life growing up, I never really seen that much racism. Until now. I mean, you had a few bad apples here and there. And here's the other part of history that most people don't talk about. You know, you want to say BLM wants to blame the whites. Well, go ahead. Just remember, there's a group that hates you worse than our racist whites. And they've got a big gathering here in the United States because they come across the border and they don't like blacks. And truthfully, that's where I've heard most of my racist stuff from, was from Mexicans against blacks. In fact, we've seen it play out. We see it play out in California, in Oakland. Oakland used to be majority black. Now it's Hispanic. Look at the violence and turf wars that went on in California alone, in Houston, in Texas. You know, I guess people forget modern history too. I'm against any form of racist. And here's a simple fact, guys. You can call it, you want to start calling people racist? Well, I'm going to call you a racist because everybody is. Everybody hates something. Whether it be a food, a color, a book, a name. You guys missed that part of the definition. You know, history is always going to be a lesson, whether it be modern or past. It teaches us not to make the same mistakes. And when we're young, we don't realize this. We realize that as we grow, as we start living and experiencing life, then we start realizing, like, my ideology was quite wrong back then. I'm the first to admit it. A lot of my ideology back then was quite wrong. When reality came around and actually slapped me in the face and showed me differently. But I had to go out and experience things and live. You know, I'm not a fan of any war. Because I know what war is all about. Let's keep it all the way for real on this. War is only about one thing. Population control and money. But as we've learned, the only way to make money during a war is to have a world war. Small skirmishings actually hurt that narrative, not the ideology. It needs to be a world war. It needs to be a war on a grand scale to where people are forced to have to go build stuff, make stuff to supply the military for long, extended campaigns. And those have only happened during world wars or civil wars. And what's that happen? We end up having mass amounts of loss of life. So it's another form of population control. So I oppose any aspect of war. But that doesn't, on the same token, that doesn't mean that it's not necessary sometimes. My personal ideology of it all is, screw what they're doing over there. It's none of our business. We got too many issues in our own country. That's what every country should be thinking about, their own country, not what some other country's doing. Because, we've been the hammer and the sword point for almost a century. Maybe it's time we let somebody else do that so they can get all that hate that all these other countries, when we have to go in and do something. History has shown us that lesson. But sadly, that's our politicians. That's what they believe in because they know that's how they can get money. They know certain people that bank their payrolls, that bank their parties. A lot of the money that's flowing in now is foreign money because a lot of our corporations here in the United States is owned by foreign entities. And when the Supreme Court made that ruling early 2010, 2009, where anybody can put, it was actually started before that, I think, where a corporation is not considered an American, so therefore a corporation can spend as much money as they want on a campaign, where the average citizen can only spend, I think it's like $2K. Might be wrong there. It used to be $2K. It might be a little bit more than that, or it might be a little less. But a corporation can spend millions. I mean, if you step back and look at the history of this last election cycle, how much the DNC, how much they spent this year alone on trying to get their candidates elected is ridiculous. If you took that money, you're going to knock a nice chunk out of our national debt. Why do they do this? Well, it's simple. They don't want Pam to become a senator. They don't want me to become a governor or a mayor. We can't afford it. We can't afford to just to have a bankroll, 5K, just to get started, just to get our name. Then we got to pay for the media attention, that brings me back to the censorship, which is another form of book burning. When you start censoring the people, who did that? I don't need to keep quoting his name, but he did that. He censored people. He told them what they could say. If they said anything else, I'll use them. They'll go even farther in modern times. Every dictator said that and done that to the press, to the people. They didn't realize how bad social media was until Trump came along. They didn't realize the power, the real power of it. And he showed everybody. I don't need to spend millions and billions of dollars on a campaign. I don't need on all these media stations. I'll reach out to the social media. That's where everybody's at. Everybody's on a social network of some sort. The difference is he had the money to do it, to actually be a legitimate person. He had the money in the bank already. And he made a mockery out of the system. They don't like that because that actually shows that, hey, if I can get the capital to become a senator or governor or a mayor, to get my name on the ballot, I can use social media and actually get elected. They don't want that. They don't want the common person, the everyday citizen, to become an official. Even on the state level, very few states and counties have community-type-based governance, where it's the community that gets elected into these offices. There's still a few out there, but they're rare. We want to stop all this. We need the right people in the position. Who is the right people? It's the everyday citizens, the everyday people seeing what's going on, that's awake, that understands what's going on. Talking to our communities, showing them what's going on. Hey, do you agree with our kids being taught this and not being taught that? How many people out there actually know their kids aren't being taught the history that they were taught? Because here soon, it's going to be the next generation's kids. And they won't even know that that history was missing because their generation wasn't taught it. Their parents' generation wasn't taught that history. You see how dangerous this cycle is? And it is. It's a slow drip. It's a slow drip that some of us are starting to see and wake up to and realize. And sadly, it's days like this where I hate my philosophy of quality over quantity, because this is a video that should be shared, that I would love to reach millions of people, and it's not going to happen. It'll be a slow feed to people, and mainly because I managed to piss off every group by what I say. It's become more and more evident with the followers I get on Twitter, the followers I get on my WordPress site, and the fact that I've only got 9 subscribers here on this channel. This channel does not grow on YouTube, not at all. Why? Because I'm eventually going to talk about one group and another group and another group and point out the flaws, point out the rhetoric, and sadly, I'm dealing with the younger generation. I can't cross that divide. And that's become a lot of people's mentality. It goes back to something I've had to learn in life myself. Until reality slaps you in the face or it hits close to home, they don't care. They don't want to believe it. Because it is numbing. It's a reality check. Then the first thing they want to blame is themselves. They're not to blame. It wasn't your fault. I just know we can't keep going down the road we're going. Because eventually it's going to become a one-way street. And it's just not going to be good. History's shown us what this road leads to. And eventually that history's not even going to be able to be found to remind people of this. Trust me, I played hell finding these images today. Today it actually paid off to have a high vocabulary to search other words and meanings to get images for this video. Yes, Total Control, 1984. I'm actually shocked they haven't tried to ban that book. But most people read that book and say, oh, this is just conspiracy theory. That stuff don't happen. You know who I blame for a lot of that? Is people like Alex Jones. The way he does things. People get turned off on fear porn. People get turned off when you come out with outlandish things like that. And the worst part is, I like a lot of some of the stuff. I like going to the website and reading the articles and following the links and researching it myself. I can't stand to listen to the guy anymore. I'm unsubscribed and everything. I still go to the website from time to time to see what's posted, then follow the links. But eventually, they're going to stop even putting the links up, so it becomes one-sided. You know, that's the thing. I'm all about credit your sources, guys, all of them, so people can go find them. When I do articles, actually type up blogs and stuff, I put multiple sources, even the opposing sources. That way you can find it, and you can find the other links to start researching so you can come up with your own conclusion, your own thoughts. Not what I think, not my views and opinions, but your own. You're educating yourself when you do it. And when you start doing that, eventually when you hear people say things, something will trigger and it'll make you uncomfortable, or it's like, man, that's not right. I read this somewhere. And you instantly know, hey, this guy's trying to mislead us. That's the important questioning everything. When we start doing that, we'll start seeing a different side of things. We won't be so gullible into buying into these people that infiltrate our groups. We won't be such to oppose travel bans on countries that murder women, rape children. I wish Be Rich would start doing more podcasts. I know you got burnout. I know you got tired of the censorship. I'm sure there's more to it. But, you know, he was good. The stuff he was doing was good. He was actually, and that's the thing, most people, when we do things like this, we expect to see some results. We expect to start seeing people change. Then we get bombarded with the censorship, or we get bombarded with the trolls, or the thumbs down. That's why I try to tell people, hey, somebody's thumb down your video, you're doing your job. You actually made them question. You made them think. Thumbs down is good. You know, but they want to be able to see results. And I learned that a long time ago. Sometimes you're not going to see the results. I'm not one of his favorite people due to my religious preferences. I would love to. You know, and since I brought that up, you know, I don't judge anybody. That's something I've learned a long time ago. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you practice and what you believe, because, one, I stick by what I've always said. That's your right. You're an American citizen. The Constitution protects that. I've also experienced other religious ideologies, philosophies, and belief systems. I've talked to people that are Muslim, Christians, Jews. His thing is, he can't stand, it's him and a bunch of other people. When you start talking about the occult community, that's where they draw the line. And his ideology and their ideology, everybody in the occult community is elitist, Satanist, and that's not true. There is some, but there's bad apples in every group. And that's the other thing. It's been used to divide us so much. That's why I try not to even talk about it on this channel. Because the truth is, there's a lot of people in that community that want the very same things we do. That could actually help you understand how you're actually staring into a black mirror right now. How that you're actually allowing gateways to be opened in your house. This computer screen, your cell phone, your iPad is nothing more than a gate, a mirror, a black mirror, or easier term, it's a Ouija board. You know, those that understand that they know how to do certain protection so stuff can't come through. Okay? So it can't be used that way. They know how to close the veil and seal it. A black mirror is a scrying. It's used for scrying. It's also used for communication. Viewing, or it can be used of a way of summoning something through. Those that actually know how to do it. And usually what comes through is not what you want to come through. You know, it's just like when people start talking about AIs, which I'm going to do a video on eventually. Yes, very much kind of like CERN in the scientific technical terms. In fact, there's a couple of people who've done videos that's in the truther community about how some of the circuitry on some of our electronics, like our computers and our cell phones, are actually seals from the Geoete, or the Lesser Keys of Solomon, meant to summon demons. Which shocked me when I learned that. You know, that's actually part of history as well. It goes back to where, when I talk about words and taking them back to their root origin, where were they first used in history? Yeah, the word heathen, heretic, and pagan first got you meant, I'll actually literally mean free thinker, people that question. So if you question, you are a free thinker, so therefore you oppose. When you start removing that type of history, like I said, there's two forms of history. There's the written, which is usually his story, which means written by the conqueror, not the conquered. The conquered is passed down usually either through, sometimes written in journals, or from ancestor to ancestor. I've never heard of that. My thing is when it comes to stuff like that is research. Don't be scared to listen to some people, because some people, they might not be able to prove it in the written documents or written form because it was passed down from ancestor to ancestor by word of mouth. Sometimes our truest history can be found that way. I'll have to look him up. It's just like, the no DAPL, or North Dakota Pipeline incident with the Indians. I was all backing it, all for what they were about doing. Then somebody pointed, a friend of mine that's Indian pointed out. He goes, "I don't support that." I'm like, "Why?" I mean, other than the various reasons. He said, "Because our ancestors taught us not to leave no trace upon this earth. Don't let our footprints be left behind on this earth." We got in a good debate about that one. About a 2-hour debate about it. Because, I was questioning him. I wanted to learn why he believed that. And when it was all said and done, I kind of agreed with him. I still had my own points because they lost their land. We took it from them. And then we gave them federal land. They don't even own the land that they're on. The federal government can take that land whenever they want. It's just basically being leased to them. It just goes back to play on words. It's federal land. Here, this is where you guys can live. These are your reservations. Which is very scary when we start hearing some of the rhetoric coming out the alt-right and left, how they want just communities of white people and Mexicans. That's very much what our federal government did to the Indians. And we've seen what happened to the Indians. To now claim if you have Indian blood in you, the percentage used to be pretty high. Now it's very low. I think it's like now 12%. It seems like every year the number decreases. To actually be recognized as an Indian. And that's where, you get a lot of the ideology that you see being thrown around. They use fractions of the truth, but they don't realize we've already seen what that does. History has shown us what that does. They don't catch that part. They don't catch the part. Look at the Indians now. They don't even own the land they're on. Even though they say they give it to them, it's still called federal land. No cop, no state cop, no sheriff can enter that land. Only federal marshals can go onto that land. Which is why you've seen during the DAPL actually, you've seen mercenaries. You've seen hired private corporations. I can't remember their names. Now they keep Blackwater keeps changing their name. I don't know what they're called anymore. I won't mention another one because I know some people in it. They don't like the name mentioned. And that's what they don't realize when they start talking about these things. We need our own communities. No, we don't. We don't need any form of segregation. You need to realize that you're an American. There's no color involved. There's no ethnicity. You're an American citizen. You're not Jew. You're not Islam. You're not Muslim. You're not Christian. You're not white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Puerto Rican. You're an American. Start believing in that. You can actually, in this country, put an end to what we're seeing now. If you realize that very simple truth, you're an American. 99% of Americans their ancestors came from another country before they immigrated here and became American. The 1%, which is almost gone, was the Native Americans. We still call them Americans. The natives, the original inhabitants of this country. Now they're the 1%. They're actually foreigners in their own land. And most of them will say the very same thing. We're an American. So the ideology of racism and culture being used against us to divide us, divides us. I'm Baptist, I'm Pentecostal, I'm Methodist, I'm Mormon, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm sat in many of those pews that I've just named. I'm Catholic. And heard the division being taught against the other. So supposedly Christianity. You know, they all claim to be Christians. And condemning one over the other. They're wrong. And that's where I get in trouble with a bunch of other people. When I start talking about those very same things. Well, you know what? I've made it a choice to experience those things, to sit in those pews, to experience that religion, to hear what was being said. Most people, I'll say I was born, raised, saved, born again in a Baptist church. I know for a fact I was. I know what I felt. You can't deny what you feel, what you experience. But it also, what drove me away from the Baptist church was hearing him, the preacher, preach dogma against other Christians, against Catholics. So I went to other churches, see if the same thing was happening, see if I could find a church that didn't do that. I didn't find a single one. They all do it. I'm very spiritual, just in my own way. There's so many things in history that shows us how things have changed, what they've used, how they control people. And it's in everything, in any type of label, whatever you want to label yourself. People can say, well, you're saying call yourselves American. That's a label. Well, yes, you got me. That is a label. But what's behind that label? The right for everybody to believe and practice what they want, the right to free speech, the right to equality, the right to a dutiful justice and judgment, not to be illegally persecuted because of your belief, not to be oppressed. That's what our Constitution, our Bill of Rights have given to each and every one of us, freedom. The the very same thing that they keep trying to take away from us. They try to remove aspects of history that show how these things go wrong. Rome was a great empire. It fell because of corruption. It fell because of greed. Senators murdering senators. But look at the technology. Look at the architecture, the engineering that when Rome fell was lost. Even to this day, some of the stuff they did, we're still amazed at how they did it with what did they do it with. Our pyramids, our scientists to this day cannot even tell you how they were made. Our archaeologists say the same thing. Every great empire has fallen, and you can usually find the history of it in most of them. It all came down to one common denominator: corruption, people that wanted to control the masses. They wanted to call you a heretic because you questioned things. They couldn't control you. They couldn't control what you said, so you're a danger because you'll go around and tell other people, and you'll show them and waken them up to the truths. So therefore, you need to be burned at the stake. You need to be publicly hung, executed. History shows us all this. Then along comes the Nazis, the book burning. Along comes Common Core, the removing of history. Along comes, now we need to remove these monuments. We need to remove our flag from our college campuses, state buildings. We need to remove the Ten Commandments from the front of courthouses. You know, the Constitution clearly states, our Supreme Court has clearly stated this year, even if that might be hateful or hate speech, it is protected. That religious symbol is protected, no matter what symbol it is, by the Constitution. Now do you see how they've used all the labels to divide us, to cause people like me as Pam Player? I would love to do a live podcast with Be Rich. But when it comes to our religious differences, we bump heads and I'm the bad guy. Division. And it even happens on all sides. It's a means to control the masses. You control them through fear. You control them by saying, this whole group, because of these bad apples, is bad. They're evil. Here's something for you. I even got friends that are Aryan. And I tell you what, they don't even recognize David Duke. They look at him as a fraud. Now that tells you something. Do I agree with their ideology and philosophy? No. Does that mean I still can't be friends with them? No. Because they've learned through history. Yes, they might have some prejudice over some things, but I judge them how they act around others, how they uphold themselves in the community. I don't judge them because they're an Aryan, from the Aryan nation or the Aryan Brotherhood. I judge them how they raise their kids and family, how they interact with other people. How they treat me. Some people, well, it makes you a racist. Well, very ideology of it, I could never be. I couldn't even if I wanted to be. Why? Because I'm mixed. American Brazilian. I actually have dual citizenship. My mom's from Brazil. My dad's from here in America. Which is why I've also been able to experience another culture, living in Brazil, seeing how the system there is bad. No, and we're so quick to judge. Even I am. If I have a, well, I'll tell you what one of my flaws is, I'm too nice. And some people say, well, that's not a flaw. Well, it can be. When you try to hold on to hope, try to, be nice, try to help somebody when they just don't want it, but you don't let go. Sometimes the best way to help, sometimes it's from a distance, being there when they finally hit rock bottom or reality slaps them in the face, because they will come to you. And sometimes I can't see when enough is enough to step back. That's one of my flaws. And I know my friend who's like a brother to me reminds me of it constantly when I go to do it. But he only mentioned it once, because he knows I'm stubborn and probably not going to listen to him. Gotten to where I have most of the time. But I'm good at reading people. Usually before we even speak, I've already judged you. I already know more about you than what you actually realize. Why some people keep me around. To be truthful. I just have that ability. And sometimes, though, I'm not always right. I've met a couple of people that when I first said, oh no, we're not going to get along, they end up being one of my best friends. So I've learned that over the years. So I take caution. I listen to myself. But I give the person the benefit of the doubt. Let them prove me wrong. Because sometimes we don't realize sometimes we meet people for a reason. Maybe that reason is something in our lives that needs changed, or maybe it's something in their lives that needs changed, that they can only get from us. It was another hard lesson for me to learn. I'm pretty good at blending in to my surroundings. People said it, I'm a good chameleon. I can blend into my surroundings. Pretty much will fit in any group and not look out of place. It's a good trait because it allows me to learn from everyone. It allows me to find common ground. The day I can't find common ground with somebody, which I'm starting to find that as an issue, there's something wrong. Something went drastically wrong. Because we should be able to find common ground even with our enemy. Somewhere. And now you can't even, it's like, why is that? Well, a lot of stuff I was taught, a lot of stuff I experienced, they're slowly erasing it from history. The history books are taking it, removing the monuments. It's like, how can you? Don't you see what's going on? And then when you try to point something out, even sports divide people. What's the hate saying it? Don't be around here at my house during an Ohio and Michigan game time. My whole family's Ohio State fan. I'm a Michigan fan. I'm the odd one out every year. What do we call that? We call that rivalry. rivalry. This is like brother and sister rivalry, or brothers have rival against each other. It's all good until it starts dividing you. We watched the 2016 elections. We watched how that system divided everyone. And here's something for anybody that listens to this video. Go back, find out, research who coined the term alt-right. Research that. You'll be amazed when you find out the answer. Then ask yourself, what is the alt-right really about? You can do that with pretty much any group. Democratic Party. Research it. You can do it with the Republican Party. Research it. That's why I said we've had an issue with nationals for a very long time, clear back to the Revolutionary time. It's actually what cost my forefather a nomination to the Supreme Court. Because he stood up against, I think it was Taft, the Taft Treaty, or the Tate Treaty, I can't remember which it was, which was a form of nationalism. My forefather was considered a Jeffersonian, because he followed the ideologies and the political views of Jefferson. And he spoke out against something. He did sit on the Supreme Court, because I guess the guy who was on it previously had retired. He was going to be nominated anyway. He was up to be nominated. So George Washington put him in the vacant seat until his nomination came up. Well, while he was on part of the Supreme Court, he wrote something, stood up against something against the nationalists, and it cost him his nomination. So even after we fought the Revolutionary War and won, it was dealing with the treaty. Is what it was dealing with. Which I think he was kind of wrong on opposing the treaty aspect of it. That's my personal opinion. And see, I'm speaking against my forefather. But just from history, what history has showed us, maybe he was wrong. But he wasn't wrong, and I've always also pointed out, maybe he was wrong about the limits, not putting the term limits on the Senate. You know, it's fun what you learn through history. That's my family history. You know, I've read some of the old journals. That's why I got so mad when Nancy Pelosi came out and mentioned my forefather's name and saying that he lost his property to the British. Or that he was arrested by the British. All I got to say to her, do your research on Dictator John before you mention his name. The South gave him the nickname Dictator John because he refused to relinquish a fort, because they said the fort would fall. You know what? The British couldn't take the fort because the cannonballs couldn't go through the walls. He was right. Ever since then, he earned the name Dictator John in the South. And no, he did not lose his property to the British. He lost his property because he went insane and was an alcoholic and drank himself to death. Well, not to death, but might as well have. Tried to commit suicide off a bridge, which you think, because two slaves that were by the bridge jumped in the water and saved him, he thought, well, that would have changed his ideology on slavery. It didn't. He died still owning a slave, and it caused a division within the family. Why majority of my family moved north during the Civil War. Even his wife freed all the slaves that she owned. You know, it is funny the things we learn when we actually study our history, study our ancestry. You know, that's why I said we're all American. There should be nothing about race anymore, nothing about color. You know, everybody has equality, should be treated as equals. But it's not. Look at our justice system. The rich make a mockery out of it. We commit a crime, we go to prison. They commit a crime, they get a slap on the wrist. We commit corporate, not corporate, what is it called? Insider trading. We go to federal prison. They commit that. They pass a law so it doesn't affect them. I would love to see them do an investigation on how many of them made millions on that insider trading thing. And I'd love to see them all be brought up on ethics charges because they ran a senator out of the Senate for bringing a proposal that would have stopped them from doing the very same thing. So what do? They pass a law. They finally pass a bill after they got caught condemning it, but they put a little extra in it so they couldn't be prosecuted or tried, so it wouldn't be illegal for them to do it. That's recent history. Now do you see why they want us working so many long hours, having to work 2 jobs that we can't actually go and read the bills that proposed, why they try to make 1,000-page bills? Yes, they should be. You know, let's be truthful. Every senator, every congressman that ran for re-election and promised repeal and replace, or to repeal Obamacare or replace Obamacare, and voted against it, has committed an ethic violation. They have went against what they were voted for and they promised to do. So, truthfully, they all should be brought up on ethics charges. We the people, for the people. You speak, you're supposed to be our voice. This is what you ran on, this is why we elected you. But unfortunately, the ethics community is ran in Congress. There's only 7 states that can actually do a recall election. Every other state has to petition the ethics committee to file ethics charges. Yeah, follow the money. Actually, you follow the money, you'll find out some of the people that organized the alt-right in Charlottesville, you'll find Soros money. Some of the speakers. Follow the money. That's why I said, I'll re-say it and keep saying it. I'll be that Bible-thumping preacher on the corner that keeps walking up on you. Start talking to your communities. Start showing these things, pointing it out. Start finding your leaders in your community that want to change, that know change needs to be made on every level. We need to start putting the everyday citizen into these offices. We need to start demanding in our school system that they no longer teach Common Core. That 50 Shades of Grey is not all right to be teaching our children. That Huckleberry Finn is not racist. That the history that they say puts a blemish on this country is what made this country. It stops us from repeating those mistakes. We need to stop the book burning. Stop the defacing, the removing of monuments. Stop following stupid labels. There's only one label out there that should concern any of you. American. You are an American. And when you do acts like this, what this picture is showing, you should be arrested, persecuted, and charged, and you should spend a nice lengthy time in jail, not slapped on the wrist with a vandalism charge. Because what you did, you disrespected the Constitution, you disrespected our forefathers, you disrespected our soldiers. You disrespected every American in this country. You disrespected every future American. The fact is, guys, we're not always going to agree on things, and it's good not to. Have an open mind, listen. Do some research afterwards. Oh, don't get me started on the common sense thing. I'm beginning to honestly think that should be a book that is mandatory reading before you even graduate high school. Then if you're going to be a politician of any sort, or it should be mandatory reading, just like our Constitution should be mandatory that you would learn it, and our Bill of Rights. Because so much of this is common sense. So much of the stuff I talk about, Be Rich talks about, Dabu talks about, it's all common sense. It's things we shouldn't even have to be talking about. Act of 1871. And don't be afraid, guys, when you make a mistake. Don't be afraid to admit it. When you quote something wrong, don't be afraid to admit it and fix it. It's part of growing up. It's part of learning. It's part of educating yourself. When you start doing that, you start setting the example for others. Hey, I made a mistake. It didn't happen this way. Or when your views and opinions have changed, explain why they've changed. Explain what made you change them. It helps teach others. You're starting to live by example. You're starting to become a role model for others. for future generations. They're going to see that. They're going to want to live up to that. You guys out in the truther community, be that an example. Don't get frustrated. I know the system's rigged. There's ways around it. I mean, maybe the answer is creating a different channel and starting from scratch and building your audience. Or, I mean, I wish we had the, that's truth, I wish we had the option so we couldn't get subscribers. But eventually it's going to happen no matter what. The trolls are going to come. And like I said, that's where I strongly believe quality over quantity. But in some instance, like this video, it's gone on over 2 hours long, I wish it was quantity that more people could listen to what I'm saying. There's the dilemma that we face. We have to resolve into common sense. What's common sense about this? Being patient, knowing the message will get out there. Somebody will stumble across this that's meant to hear it, and I did my job. Whether it's just one person, I did my job. Or whether it turns out to be 1 million people. Because all it takes is that one person. That one person is going to hear that message. He or she is going to take that message, that knowledge, that wisdom, and apply it to their life, and they're going to become examples. They're going to become the new role models. They're going to start talking to other people in their community, to their friends, about the very same things we just discussed. So that one person just became my voice. I did my job. Be Rich, you've done your job. Dabu, you've done your job. iCitizens done their job. Keep doing it. The Prepared Mind, he does his job. They all do. Even the ones we don't like listening to, they're doing their job. Because if you took something offense, unless they're just blatantly lying, which there's a bunch of them, that's feeding false facts, false ideologies, with a little bit of you're prepared to question everything anyway. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up because, I came on here just meaning to only go for an hour, but I just feel it's important that people understand what's going on. I found a 19th century writer that wrote about this. Heinrich Heine, a German Jewish poet and writer, said in the 19th century, where books are burned, people will soon be burned as well. Why? Because when there's no history to prevent us from repeating those things, we'll repeat them. When a dictator can come into place, and a dictator can be a common, everyday citizen. He's got a message. He knows how to word things. He knows how to do. The best lie is told with a half-truth. What people will see is that half-truth. When you start playing on people's hatreds for other things, you can manipulate it. When you start playing on the divisions that's been created, you can manipulate them. You hit them with a little bit of half-truth, and you'll slowly start re-indoctrinating them to a new ideology, your ideology. That's what you guys got to wake up to. That's the danger of removing history. That's the danger of removing monuments. That's the danger of not researching the people we invite when we hold rallies. Not researching those speakers or the people that created these labels. You guys want change? You got to be willing to actually start the change with yourself. You start by changing yourself by starting to question everything. Realizing that Maybe I wasn't right about some of the things. Maybe that person I've been listening to is not what he's supposed to be. Change starts with you first. Then we can start changing the direction things are going. Start getting back into your community. It starts with our communities. It starts with our brothers, sisters, families, friends, our neighbors. It starts pointing out these things. What's going on? We need to change the direction we're going. We're going down a very dangerous road that has happened throughout history multiple times. And the end result, and almost all of them, was the fall of an empire. A culture almost annihilated. Things for you guys to think about. You know, there's the old saying, when we're united, we're the strongest, most opposable force, but when we're divided, we will fall. And right now, we are so divided, we need to break that division. Stop creating new problems. Focus on the problems that are already there. Pick one. Bring it to your communities. Tackle it. You will find, once you start doing that, more will join. But be aware of the wolves in sheep clothing as well, because they will try to infiltrate. How do you stop that? By being knowledgeable, by questioning everything that's being said and taught. When you start questioning, you become free thinkers. When you become free thinkers, you become free. I will see you guys on the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for rambling on for almost over 2 hours. And I'm sure I'll be doing another one before the week's over. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your week. And be safe.